Hi there, everyone. My name is Ryan, and I basically wanted to talk about something very different from what I normally talk about. So I may normally talk about constitutional reform. Right now, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Philippine president, Rodrigo Duterte. So I've noticed that there's actually a lot of people who still don't really know what he stands for. All right, and a lot of this is because of what comes out of the news. And we're talking about the news that is largely influenced by what is produced by oligarch-owned Philippine mass media news outlets. All right? So these people who own many of these oligarch-owned news outlets, what they want to do is to basically preserve the status quo. And obviously, Duterte is not for that. He's actually for making drastic changes to allow more foreign investors to come in and create jobs and set up competition to the existing monopolies that exist, which are usually owned by these oligarchic families. So they hate that. So of course, in their war of trying to convince people that Duterte is a bad guy, what they're going to do is to try to make things look really bad. So they're going to basically pin all kinds of crimes, killings that are done by criminals on him and make it appear like it's actually what part of his war on drugs and war on crime, and say, look, there's a death toll. There's a death toll. A lot of people are dying because of him. Well, let me explain to you what's going on here. It's actually been proven that a lot of this has nothing to do with what Duterte is doing. Duterte basically, if you guys read the fine print, you'll notice that Duterte isn't really about killing the criminals. He uses the threat of killing. He says, if you don't surrender, I will kill you. If you don't surrender and if you try to fight back, my policemen are going to be forced to defend themselves and you are likely to get killed. He says those kinds of things to basically put the fear in all these criminals and drug lords, to say, look, we're coming after you, and if you don't come quietly, something's going to happen. But on the other hand, if you voluntarily surrender, we'll treat you well. We'll probably give you a lighter sentence. We'll probably, if you're known to not have done anything other than selling drugs, then we're likely to just put you on rehab if you're yourself an addict, or assist you with livelihood programs or stuff like that, and just basically register you so that we can monitor you to make sure you do not regress and go back to doing this. That's kind of what they do. It's not about killing people. It's not about exterminating criminals. That's the rhetoric. That's the whole point of trying to scare people, because you need to scare people. How else are people going to surrender if they don't see, you need to have carrot and the stick. You need to scare them into surrendering, at the same time telling them, if you surrender, this is what you get in return. And a lot of them actually get Zumba lessons for free and all kinds of stuff that actually, gives them this idea that, it's better that I actually did, in fact, voluntarily surrender. That's the whole point. You cannot just entice people by saying, come on guys, free ice cream if you surrender, but there's nothing if you don't. I mean, like, we don't scare you, or we don't say that we're going to do something to you if you do not surrender. You need to do this. That's why good cop, bad cop works. Whether you like it or not, it's one of the most successful techniques, because you're basically saying, if you continue with what we don't want, right, this is what's going to happen to you. Now, if you do what's good, then you're rewarded. It's all about reward and punishment. That's how it works. But most people in this day and age kind of don't understand how this works. They just think you say something and people will follow. They have this mistaken notion that people are inherently going to just, follow the rules just because you say what the rules are. The rules need to be enforced. Rules, in fact, need to be prosecuted. The word prosecuted means they need to be acted upon. Okay, so you need to basically encourage people to do what is right. You need to encourage criminals to voluntarily surrender by showing them that they are going to be rewarded if they do so, and that they are going to be punished if they don't. That's how it works. Now, these things, these talks about the extrajudicial killings and all that, the problem there is it's all about distractions by media. And unfortunately, even foreign media is getting distracted, because if their only source of what they think of as truth is the Inquirer or ABS-CBN or other news that news outlets that tend to come up with highly biased and highly partisan output, it's very likely that you're not going to get good news. You're not going to know. You're not going to know what you need to know. Most people, for example, who go against Duterte, but do so because they don't know much about him. They say, "Oh, he's kind of like Hitler," and I'll tell you how this works. Hitler was a bad guy because everything emanated from his hatred of people who were not like him, people who were not German, people who were Jewish, Gypsy, Slavic, whatever. There was a certain set of people that he did not like, and just because you belong to that group, he didn't like you. He wanted to exterminate you. That's the whole point about that guy. Duterte, on the other hand, his politics is very inclusive. You see, the Philippines is a very fragmented, diverse society. So yes, there is a majority of people who are from a Christian background, from a Catholic or an increasingly evangelical Protestant background. But amidst this huge majority of Christian-based the populace, there's actually also a lot of people who come from different groups. So you've got a lot of Muslim groups and basically ethnicities who speak different languages, who are Muslim, and people coming from traditional, indigenous belief systems. So especially in Davao, in Mindanao, you have all these people that are called, they're basically called lumads, and so there's lumads, and then there's the Bangsamoros, and they're all subdivided to so many different subgroups. Okay, now what Duterte has done in his own city is he has actually appointed deputy mayors from each of those groups to act as representatives. So every time there is some special ceremony, or every time there's something that needs to be addressed, he actually calls upon these deputies to help him out in making sure that what needs to be done is done with engagement with each of these communities. So that's pretty much how it works. He actually tries to bring different people together. He unites people. That's how it works with Duterte. He's passed the most liberal and progressive legislation, local ordinances, local legislation in the city regarding women's rights. And then when it comes to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, transgender discrimination, he has made legislation, local legislation again that is about not discriminating against them. So he has all these things in his history, in his background, that prove that he is a very inclusive, pro-people person. So it's not just about fighting crime. A lot of what he's done is he's set up systems that help people. He's set up a really, really effective 911 system in Davao City. So you think about it, a lot of what he's done proves he's nowhere close to either Trump or Hitler or even Marcos. The thing is, he has been very, very inclusive. Okay, so it's wrong to basically say Duterte has anything to do with Hitler. I mean, that is the most absurd and most stupid thing I've actually ever heard. Now, people who don't know, the facts about this, because say they're foreigners and they don't really know much about the context of the Philippines, they're kind of excused. I mean, you're excused because I mean, well, not being Filipino, you're not really supposed to know this anyway, right? Because you're not from my country. You're not from the Philippines. It's not your responsibility to know. But now you know, okay? So make sure you're informed. Make sure you really know what you're supposed to know before you comment about certain things. So one of the biggest problems is when people comment about stuff and it's based on very limited information that they're getting. All right. Now, for Filipinos, it's more important to really know what they need to know, because unfortunately, media is very biased. We have mass media outlets that are trying to control our minds by basically trying to let us think that black is white and white is black, or that good is bad and bad is good. You know, they're trying to basically misinform us about, say, things like federalism. Some of them are trying to make federalism look like it's bad, or so many different things. So they're trying to manipulate our minds, and unfortunately, because that's what appears on print or in the news, the foreign media also get that. Now, it's a good thing that there are actually analysts out there from outside, foreigners, who intimately understand the history and the context of the Philippines, so they're actually able to make really fair assessments. There's one guy, David Conroux, or David Camroux, who's a professor in Sciences Po in Paris, and I mean, he's one guy who, if you actually watch him on France 24, France 24, they have an English service. He's been interviewed a lot, and he talks a lot about Duterte and his transformative agenda, and so he also explains away the fact that the way he deals with things is basically to use fear. Not to kill people, but to threaten the criminals, that if you don't surrender, this is what's going to happen. The intention is not to kill, but the intention is to get them to surrender. So at the end of the day, that's what people need to understand. Now, sometimes people just don't know how to play chess, or this whole strategy thing. You need to do this to get that. I mean, sometimes they just simplistically look at things based on what they hear and what's being said. You have to dig deeper to understand. When Duterte says what he says it because that's the only effective way to get people to comply. These bad guys to comply. You can't deal with drug lords with kid gloves. You can't be a nice guy towards these people. You actually have to be nasty. You have to know how to play their game to be able to outsmart them. If you're going to try to be a nice guy, you're not going to get anywhere. So I think this is very, very important for people to understand. You just can't be a nice guy to bad guys. You have to be like a bad guy as well, so that the bad guys understand this guy means business. And that's how it works. So don't be swayed by media. Analyze, understand everything. And this requires a lot of reading and research. All right. So I hope this has helped. I hope people who have had some kind of bias against Duterte and his, what he's trying to achieve, get to better understand the whole context behind what's going on in the Philippines. The Philippines has a situation where things have become so bad that if he doesn't do this, if he doesn't act tough, if he doesn't do exactly the methods, or use the methods that he's actually using right now, nothing's going to happen. Right? It's necessary to do this. This is how it works, guys. All right? Thank you very much. My name is Orion.